Okay, so yesterday we talked about how to find the distance on a number line, and you guys took an assessment out of 8. Okay, if you made a 6 out of 8 or higher, you can just move to the next thing on the agenda. However, if you were a 5 or lower, you need to complete this assignment and then take the quiz in Mastery Connect. Okay, so quick review. We have a number line, right? And we talked about if this is 0, everything on this side would be a positive, and everything on this side would be a negative. So if we had a number, like, let's start out small. We have a positive 10 on this side and a negative 7 on this side. We need to do 2 things to find the distance between here. Now, we could count these spaces because these are small numbers, but we need to learn how to write the equation for when we have bigger numbers. So, first thing we need to do is subtract, and then we're going to find the absolute value. Okay, so we're going to be doing these 2 steps the entire time. Okay, so first number is negative 7. We're going to subtract 10, and we're going to find the absolute value of that. Okay, so if you look, you have, I need a yellow highlighter, 7 negatives. Remember we talked about the sign before the number tells you what it is. That's 7 negatives, and then we have 10 negatives over here. Okay, I've also told you guys before to put these in boxes. If you're struggling with that, that's something that's going to help you. So if I box this up, I see I have 7 negatives, 10 negatives. I'm going to put all my negatives together and get negative 17. And I'm going to find the absolute value of that negative 17, which is going to be positive 17. Okay, that is the distance between here and here. Okay, and if we think about it, it's 7 to get to 0 and another 10. There are, in fact, 17 places between those 2 numbers. Okay, so that's the first example. And a lot of you missed this in class, but the order does not matter. So let's say that I decided to start with 10 and I wanted to subtract my negative 7. I have to put subtract and the negative. In absolute value bars, we all know that 2 negatives make a positive, which would give me the absolute value of positive 17, which is 17. Okay, so it did not change my answer. You can start with whichever number you want first. Okay, and that's because we're finding the absolute value when we're done. Okay, let's try another one very quickly, and then you guys are going to try some of these by yourself. So here's 0. Everything on this side is positive. Everything on this side is negative. And let's say that we have 10, or we'll get bigger numbers here, 150 and 350. 2-step process. 1, subtract. Okay, so I'm going to write my numbers down. 150 minus 350. And then 2, we're going to find the absolute value. Absolute value bars. Okay, so I'm going to box it up so I can see exactly what these numbers are. This is a positive 150. This is a negative 350. So I have to ask myself, what do I have more of? Well, I have more negatives. And then anytime we want to figure out how much more of something we have, we subtract. So this is like saying you owe $350. You pay 150 of it, but you are still going to owe $200 when you're done. Okay, so when I subtract these, I still owe $200. Now, absolute value bars. Absolute value of negative 200 is positive 200. So there are 200 numbers between 150 and 350. Okay, and just to show you guys it doesn't matter, I'll start with the 350 minus the 150. 350 minus 150 is in fact 200. Absolute value of 200 is still 200. okay? I'll show you a negative negative. That way you can see that. Same number line. Notice I'm not making tick marks. We don't actually need tick marks on a number line to know what to do with it. So negative 517. And we'll say we have negative 17. I'm going to follow my two-step process. So 1, I'm going to write my numbers down before I ever get going. Okay, and I want to subtract these, so I have to put minus negative 517 minus that negative 17. Okay, so that gives you that double negative here, which makes a positive, and we're going to find the absolute value. So box them up like so. Ask yourself, do I have more negatives or more positives? Well, I have more negatives. And then I'm going to subtract to see how many more. So if I did 517 minus 17, I have 500 more negatives. Absolute value of that is going to be 500. Now let's flip and try it the other way. We have negative 17, negative 517. I'm going to subtract them and find the absolute value. 2 negatives make a positive. I need to figure out what I have more of. And now that I've flipped them, I actually have more positives. So my answer is going to be a positive. And then I just do the 517 minus the 17. And I have 500. And the absolute value of 500 is still 500. Okay? That order did not change my answer. Okay, so just make sure if you have 2 negatives, you remember that those 2 negatives make a positive right here, okay? Next, this was the one you guys really got stuck on, and you got to be careful with. So just because I have a negative 300 here and a positive 300 here does not mean that we are doing additive inverse here. We are going to subtract and do absolute value. So we write negative 300, positive 300, add our subtraction sign in, and now you will see that instead of having 0, which is what you guys initially think, you have 300 negatives and 300 more negatives, which would be negative 600. Absolute value would be 600, okay? And I could change the order on those, but it's not going to matter, because you would get 300 minus the negative 300. 2 negatives make a positive. Absolute value bars. 600's absolute value is still 600. Okay, so order does not matter here. Start with whichever number you're most comfortable with. Just make sure you are doing that 2-step process of subtract and find the absolute value when you're done. Okay, so there's your quick recap. So